My name is Natalie Vance. I'm 31 years old, and for a long time, I operated under the belief that being a dependable daughter meant quietly mending problems before they could escalate into disasters. For 6 years, I covered my parents' mortgage from my home in Chicago while they stayed back in Wisconsin. I constantly told myself the arrangement was temporary, that they were just weathering a particularly rough patch. I never sought praise, and I never asked for a single thing in return. My only goal was to ensure they didn't lose the house we called our family home. The day my world shifted didn't begin with a screaming match or a dramatic confession. It started with simple paperwork. I was at their place helping organize documents because my mother was habitually missing payments and struggled to find digital statements on her phone. While searching a drawer for a misplaced medical bill, a legal folder slid forward as if it had been waiting for me to find it. It was their estate plan. Without thinking, I opened it, expecting to see nothing more than boring, boilerplate forms. Instead, I found the one thing you never expect to see when you've been subsidizing someone else's life for years: their will. There, in plain English, was the future they had meticulously written without me. The house, the retirement funds, the savings, every cent was designated for my brother. My name wasn't mentioned anywhere, not even as a secondary backup. My hands went cold, but I walked into the living room anyway, gripping those pages as if they weighed 100 pounds. I asked them, as calmly as I could manage, how they could look me in the eye for 6 years while planning to leave me with absolutely nothing. They didn't panic, and they certainly didn't apologize. My mother just let out a long sigh, looking at me as if I were merely an inconvenience making her day more difficult. "You don't need an inheritance, Maddie. You're doing just fine." I smiled, not because the words didn't hurt, but because in that moment I finally understood my true role in this family. I wasn't a daughter, I was a solution. The next morning, my phone buzzed with a text from my mom. There was no hello or how are you. "Property taxes are due. Send the money today." She was still treating me like a personal ATM. I stared at that message for a long time before typing one simple reply. That was when the real panic set in. If you've ever been treated as the responsible one, only when someone needs your money, stay with me. The moment I stopped paying, their entire plan began to unravel. I didn't send a single dollar that day. I didn't argue, I didn't write a long manifesto, and I didn't let my emotions dictate my response. I simply set my phone down and opened my banking app, not to make a payment, but to review what I had already contributed. 6 years of transfers. 6 years of monthly confirmations. Sometimes the payments were on the first, and sometimes they were early because my mom would text me saying, "Just in case, can you send it a little sooner?" I scrolled through the history until my thumb ached. It wasn't just about the money. It represented the weekends I didn't take off, the grueling freelance projects I accepted while exhausted, and the vacations and new furniture I declined just to keep a roof over their heads. All the while, they were designing a future where my role ended the second the ink on that will dried. I made a quiet decision that felt louder than any screaming match. I deactivated the automatic transfer I had set up years ago. I canceled it with the same cold finality one uses to cancel a subscription they no longer recognize. Then I went back to my mother's text about the property taxes. The sheer entitlement in her tone was almost impressive. I took a deep breath and replied, "Tyler can handle it since the house is going to be his." I didn't add an emoji to soften the blow. I didn't say, "Love you." I just hit send and watched the delivered notification appear. For the first time in years, I felt a sense of peace, though it only lasted about 90 seconds. My phone began ringing incessantly. First my mother, then my father, then my mother again. When I didn't pick up, the texts started stacking up like falling dominoes. "Maddie, answer me. We need to talk. This isn't funny. Stop being like this." I kept my phone face down on the counter and made a pot of coffee, acting as though my world wasn't shaking. I knew exactly what they wanted, a conversation where I explained myself, apologized, and then paid up. They didn't want to understand my feelings, they wanted to reset me back into my role as their provider. Around lunchtime, my father finally left a voicemail. His tone wasn't fearful yet, it was merely irritated, as if I had forgotten to do a simple chore. "We're busy, Maddie. The deadline is close and you need to do the right thing, the right thing." I almost laughed. I texted back one final time. "I'm not discussing this. You made your choice. Please contact the person you chose." Then I muted the entire thread. I went to work, answered emails, and joined meetings, trying to ignore the tightness in my chest. Every so often, I'd glance at my phone and see the number of missed calls climbing. It wasn't just the money that made them spiral. It was the realization that I could actually say no. If I wasn't paying, then that wasn't just a document anymore. It was a promise they would actually have to live with starting right now. By evening, the messages shifted from demands to a desperate attempt to control the narrative. "Can we please talk like adults?" My mother texted. I didn't answer. "You're being selfish," my father added. I still didn't answer. I knew if I engaged, they would drag me back into the same loop I'd been trapped in for years, where my feelings were a problem, and their needs were an emergency. I was standing in my kitchen in Chicago, watching the rain hit the window when a new name popped up on my screen. My brother, Logan. "Maddie, stop being dramatic, it's just paperwork. You're really going to punish Mom and Dad over a will." I read his message twice, searching for even a shred of empathy. There was none. I could practically hear him saying it from the comfort of their couch, likely surrounded by energy drink cans, acting like he was the only reasonable person in the room. "If it's just paperwork," I typed back, "then paying the property taxes should be easy for you, too." There was a long pause before he responded with the kind of unearned confidence only a person who has never faced consequences could have. "You know I don't have that kind of money right now. You make good money. You're fine, just help them like you always do." That line hit me harder than I expected. It was the family motto: "Maddie is fine." Fine meant I was invisible. Fine meant I was useful. Fine meant I could be ignored until a bill was due. "You're 26, I replied. "If you're old enough to be the sole heir, you're old enough to handle a tax bill." My phone rang immediately. It was my father. I let it go to voicemail, and when I listened to it later, his voice had changed. He wasn't just annoyed anymore, he was furious that I was making him feel powerless. He claimed I was acting entitled, that nobody owed me anything, and that family helps family without keeping score. That part was almost comical, considering they were the ones keeping the score that mattered most. My mother followed up with a text that tried to sound loving while twisting the knife. "We didn't do this to hurt you. Tyler needs more support. You're strong, you always have been. Family takes care of each other." I stared at the word strong. To them, it wasn't a compliment, it was a leash. Being strong meant I wasn't allowed to have needs. It meant I wasn't allowed to be disappointed. It meant I was expected to carry everyone else's weight while maintaining a smile. "Family is a two-way street," I finally replied. "You wrote me out like I don't matter, then you text me like I'm still the plan. You don't get both." A minute later, my brother sent another message, his tone turning much colder. "You're really going to blow up the family over money." I didn't even want the house, Logan. I wanted the truth. I wanted respect. I wanted you all to stop treating my help like it was automatic. I then typed the simplest sentence I could, one they never expected to hear from me. "I'm not paying for a future I'm not included in." That was the turning point. Once they realized guilt wouldn't work, they moved to their next weapons: pressure, desperation, and the kind of panic that makes people do reckless things. The next morning, the pretense of feelings vanished. It became purely transactional. I opened my phone to find a payment request waiting for me, like a bill from a stranger. $3,112, $17. There was no explanation, no message, just a cold digital button that said pay. I stared at the exactness of the number. It felt insulting, as if they had sat there doing the math and decided my bank account was the only logical solution to their problem. I hit decline and took a screenshot. I wasn't planning revenge, but I was finally entering a mode of self-protection. If they were going to paint me as the villain, I wanted proof of their reality. Within minutes, my mother called again. I didn't answer. She left a voicemail, her voice trembling as if she were trying to cry on command. "Honey, please, we're in trouble. We just need you to cover this, and then we'll talk. We'll figure it out. It was always after. After I paid, after I fixed it, after they got what they wanted. My father followed up with a text that was pure manipulation. Are you really going to let us lose the house? You won't be homeless, I typed back. You'll just be inconvenienced. The silence that followed was deafening. Then my brother chimed in. Maddie, come on, just do it this once. What exactly are you doing today besides texting me? I asked him. He didn't answer that. Instead, he sent, I'm trying. I'm looking for work. You know it's hard right now. He spoke about his unemployment as if it were a temporary setback rather than a lifestyle. I realized then that my parents hadn't chosen him because he needed help. They chose him because he would never challenge them. He would never set boundaries or stop being dependent, which meant they would always maintain control. I was the one who could walk away, so they decided to punish my independence by labeling it selfishness. Around lunchtime, my mother sent a message that felt different, panic masquerading as casual conversation. Can you at least call me? I need to explain something. Right below that, she accidentally attached a photo she clearly hadn't meant to send, the kind of mistake made only in a state of desperation. It was a letter on official letterhead with a bold heading and a glaring red line. Delinquency notice. Past due. Final reminder. My stomach dropped, but not out of pity. I finally saw the full picture. They weren't short on options, they were short on willingness. They didn't want to touch their savings, sell assets, or change their lifestyle. They wanted me to maintain the stability of the house so they could keep pretending nothing was wrong, and so my brother could continue treating life like a game. I zoomed in on the date. This wasn't a surprise bill. They had been behind for months while still accepting my money. They were only panicking now because the well had run dry. I took another screenshot and sent one sentence to my mother. This notice is not my emergency. Call your heir. After that, the messages became sharper and more frequent. When persuasion failed, they did what controlling people always do. They showed up. That evening, I was heating up leftovers when the front desk called from an unknown number. Hi, this is the front desk. Your family is downstairs. They're saying it's urgent and asking to be let up. My stomach tightened, but I wasn't afraid. I knew exactly what this was. When people like my parents feel control slipping, they don't ask, they appear. I looked out the window and saw them clustered by the entrance. My mother was pacing, my father stood stiff with his arms crossed, and my brother was hanging back, staring at his phone as if he were bored by the whole ordeal. Please don't let them up, I told the receptionist. I'll come down. When I reached the lobby, my mother's face lit up with relief, as if she had won just by forcing me into the same room. She stepped forward quickly. Maddie, thank God, we need to talk. I didn't hug her. I didn't smile. I stopped several feet away, well within range of the security cameras and where strangers could overhear us, ensuring everyone stayed on their best behavior. What are you doing here? I asked, my voice level. My father cut in immediately, acting as if I were the one who had committed a crime. We drove all the way here because you're not answering like an adult. You can't just abandon your parents. We're scared, honey, my mother added, her eyes becoming shiny. This is serious. I looked past them at my brother. He glanced up and shrugged, a gesture that perfectly summarized the story of my life. You didn't come here to talk, I said. You came here to pressure me. You're punishing us over paperwork. My mother's voice rose, over something that hasn't even happened yet. My anger sharpened into something cold and clear. I'm not punishing you, I'm responding to you. You planned a future where I get nothing, then you texted me expecting me to pay for it. Nobody owes you an inheritance. My dad snapped, stepping into my personal space. You're acting entitled. Yes, my mom agreed. You're doing fine, Maddie. You have a good job, you don't need it. Tyler needs stability. I held her gaze. If I don't need an inheritance, then you don't need my money either. The air in the lobby went still. Don't be petty, my father warned. Don't hold grudges. We raised you. We paid for your college. He spoke about it as if it were a gift given yesterday, not a debt they had been collecting on for years with heavy interest. And I paid your mortgage for 6 years, I countered. My mother flinched as if the word mortgage were a physical blow. Logan finally spoke up, trying to sound mature. Maddie, look, I didn't ask for any of this. This isn't even about me. You didn't ask for it, but you sure accepted it, I told him. You're the only person on that will. You're the one they're protecting. So if it's not about you, why are you here? His cheeks flushed, and he looked at our parents for a script. He's your brother, my mother rushed in. You're supposed to help each other. That sentence used to work on me. It used to make me feel guilty for ever prioritizing myself. But standing there, watching them form the same defensive triangle they had used my whole life, I realized they weren't asking me to help my brother. They were asking me to keep him helpless so they could feel needed. You don't get to say, family takes care of each other, when you've written me out of the family on paper, I said, shaking my head. Stop dramatizing, my father yelled. It's just a plan. It's not real yet. A will is a plan for who matters when you're gone. And you made it very clear who matters. My mother's voice cracked as she switched tactics again. We're going to lose the house. Please, just cover the taxes and we'll sit down and fix everything. The pattern was so transparent it was embarrassing. Pay first, talk later. I reached into my bag and pulled out my phone. Do you want me to read the total out loud? I asked quietly. 6 years of transfers, month after month. Do you want the entire lobby to hear the exact amount you've taken from me while calling me selfish? My mother's eyes widened. My father's face stiffened. My brother suddenly looked small. Don't embarrass us, my father whispered, finally revealing the truth. It was never about love. It was about image. Then stop trying to use me, I said. I'm not paying another dime. From now on, contact the person you chose. My mother reached for my arm and I stepped back. Don't, this is the boundary. Maddie, come on, Logan muttered. You're the heir, I said, looking him in the eye. Act like it. I turned to the receptionist. If they cause any trouble, please call security. I looked at my parents one last time. You made your choice. Live with it. I walked away without running or shaking. When I got back to my apartment, my phone was flooded with messages. I didn't read them. I sent one final text to the group thread. You are not entitled to me, my money, or my peace. Contact your heir. Then I blocked every one of them. For a few moments, the silence felt like oxygen. But the next morning, I woke up to a different kind of attack. It wasn't a call, it was public shaming. A friend from home messaged me, "Are you okay? I saw your mom's post." My stomach sank as I opened Facebook. There it was, my mother's words dressed up like a prayer. She wrote about the heartbreak of children turning their backs on parents after a lifetime of sacrifice. She claimed I only cared about money and that she never thought her own daughter would treat her this way. My father commented, "We did our best. Some people are just ungrateful. We paid for her education, and this is how she repays us." Logan reposted it with a caption about true family and how real loyalty means showing up when things are hard. He didn't use my name, but he didn't have to. Everyone knew who the villain was supposed to be. I sat there for several minutes, watching strangers react to a fictional story. Neighbors left sad emojis. Distant relatives told me to call my parents. People I hadn't spoken to in a decade suddenly had opinions on my character. I finally understood why my father told me not to embarrass them in the lobby. They weren't afraid of losing the house, they were afraid of losing control of the narrative. The old version of me would have swallowed the insult, paid the bill, and let them keep telling the world they were wonderful parents with a difficult daughter. But that version of me was gone. There is a fundamental rule I've learned. If you allow people to lie about you, they only grow bolder the next time. So, I didn't lash out. I didn't resort to insults or petty name-calling. Instead, I did the one thing they weren't prepared to fight. I told the truth, calmly and with receipts. I crafted a single post, laying out the facts in chronological order. I stated clearly that I had paid their mortgage for the past 6 years. I explained how I had accidentally discovered their will, realizing I had been completely disinherited while my brother was left everything. I shared that the very next day, my mother had texted me, not with a greeting or an apology, but with a demand for property tax money. I attached screenshots of the payment requests, ensuring the amounts were visible while redacting sensitive personal information. Finally, I added the one line I knew would resonate with anyone who read it. I love my parents, but I am not a family ATM, and I refuse to fund a future that intentionally excludes me. I hit post and set my phone down. I expected my hands to shake, but they didn't. I felt a strange, steady stillness. Within minutes, the tide of public opinion began to turn. The people who had previously been offering my mother sympathy suddenly went silent. High school friends messaged me, shocked. "Maddie, I had no idea you were carrying them like this." A cousin chimed in. "Wait, you've been paying the mortgage for 6 years." Then came the comment that felt like a door slamming shut on their narrative. It was from Aunt Brenda, my father's sister. She wrote, "She's telling the truth. I've seen the bank transfers myself. She's been their lifeline for years. It's time to stop using your daughter and stop enabling your son." That single validation changed everything. It wasn't just my word against theirs anymore. It was a respected family member backing me up. My mother's original post no longer looked like a tragedy. It looked like a calculated manipulation. My father tried to salvage what was left of their reputation, replying that money shouldn't matter and that family is bigger than paperwork. But the public wasn't buying it. A stranger replied to him, "If money doesn't matter, then why were you demanding it from her the day after you cut her out of your life?" The next morning, my brother tried to play the martyr, commenting that he just wanted peace and accusing me of airing private family matters. Someone immediately shot back. "Then, why are you the only one named in the will?" My phone began buzzing incessantly again, but this time it was them. Calls from blocked numbers and texts from burner accounts flooded in. I received a message from my mother that actually made me laugh because it was so predictably selfish. "Please take it down. You're humiliating us." There it was, "No, I'm sorry. No, we were wrong. Just you're embarrassing us." My father followed up with a message that was a blatant threat. "If you don't delete that post immediately, you're going to regret it." My brother sent one as well, more vitriolic than I'd ever seen him. "You're ruining this family. You're a traitor." I read them all once, then I blocked those numbers too. I didn't need to respond. The truth was already doing the work for me. Far away in Wisconsin, I knew they were realizing something terrifying. Without the shield of secrecy, they had no power. If the world could see who they truly were, guilt-tripping wouldn't bring my money back. Only consequences remained. They didn't offer apologies because they didn't have any. Instead, they pivoted to panic management. For a few days, they went quiet online, hoping the attention would die down. But bills don't wait for a reputation to recover. Late fees began to pile up on the property taxes. Then, the mortgage servicer sent a formal notice, the kind of document that doesn't care about family values or loyalty. My mother reached out again from yet another number. This time, her tone was softer, almost saccharine. "Honey, can we please just talk privately? We're trying to figure things out." I didn't reply. I was done with private. Private was the dark room where they had trapped and exploited me for years. A few weeks later, Aunt Brenda called to give me the update my parents were too proud to admit. They had been behind on their finances much longer than they let on. They had savings, but they refused to touch them because doing so would mean admitting they had been irresponsible. They had wanted me to keep paying so they could maintain the illusion of their comfortable life. And my brother, the chosen heir, still had no plan. He only had excuses. Reality hit them hard. Without my monthly transfers, they couldn't keep the house. They tried to borrow from other relatives, but once my receipts were public, the ungrateful daughter story didn't work anymore. People stopped offering pity and started offering the one thing my family hated: practical advice. Sell the house, downsize, create a budget, get a job. My brother hated those options. He preferred the old option, me, but I was no longer part of the equation. By the end of the following month, the house was listed for sale. They didn't do it because they wanted a fresh start, as they told their remaining friends. They did it because they had no choice. The first offer was low. Rushed sales rarely fetch a premium, but they took it anyway. Watching the listing photos appear online was a surreal experience, like looking at a childhood memory through a pane of glass. I didn't celebrate their loss, but I did recognize the justice in it. They didn't lose that house because I was cruel. They lost it because they had built their entire stability on my silence and my wallet. When the sale closed, my brother had to move with them into a cramped rental on the edge of town, the kind of place he used to make jokes about. His expensive gaming setup was shoved into a corner of a small bedroom. The internet was slow. The space wasn't his. For the first time in his life, he couldn't coast on comfort while calling everyone else dramatic. He eventually took a part-time job at a big box store, complaining to anyone who would listen that the work was beneath him. But the audience was gone. My parents seemed to shrink, not physically, but emotionally. Without the house and the image of the perfect family, their power evaporated. They stopped posting inspirational quotes about family loyalty. They stopped demanding. Once, my mom sent a message that wasn't a bill. I didn't think it would go this far. I stared at that message for a long time. It wasn't an apology, but it was the closest thing to honesty I would ever get from her. I didn't answer. I didn't want them to suffer, but I had finally learned the lesson I wish I'd known years ago. Love without boundaries isn't love, it's permission. When you teach people that your kindness is automatic, they stop seeing it as a gift. They see it as a debt you owe them. I used to think being a good daughter meant absorbing every bit of unfairness in silence. Now I know that being a healthy adult means protecting your peace, even from family. Especially from family. Cutting them off didn't make me heartless, it made me free. In the months that followed, I focused on my career, on mutual friendships, and on building a life that didn't revolve around someone else's chaos. My boundaries stayed firm and my guilt stayed small. Every time I felt that old instinct to fix things for them, I reminded myself of that will. It wasn't just a piece of paper, it was a message. They showed me exactly how they valued me, and I finally chose to believe them. Being strong doesn't mean allowing yourself to be used. Being responsible doesn't mean being a sacrifice. And being family doesn't give anyone the right to write you out with one hand while reaching for your wallet with the other. You can love people and still say no. You can care and still walk away. Sometimes, the most powerful revenge isn't a scene or a fight. It's a calm, immovable boundary that finally forces everyone else to grow up. I'm proud of how I handled it, not because I won, but because I stopped losing myself. I chose self-respect over the family ATM role, and for the first time, I am protecting my own future. Sometimes love needs limits, or it simply becomes a form of control.